All right, and welcome to tonight's edition of Post-Gazette Live. I didn't think I was going to actually make it here, given some of the issues that I've had technically today and whatnot, but I figured it out, and I'm here, and I'm now ready to get rolling to talk about your Steelers and everything else. It's an incredible day in terms of what I needed to get done here, to be here. But I'm here. Good news for the Steelers is that George Pickens is going to probably play against the Chiefs on Wednesday. And, of course, we've seen the last couple of weeks what the offense looks like without George Pickens. It's not necessarily a terrible offense, but by the same token, it's not necessarily a great offense either. Not that it was great with him, but I think that at the end of the day, if you think about it, they're not nearly as good without George Pickens as they are with him. And so I think that that's the first part of the good news. Bad news is it sounds like Joey Porter Jr. is going to be out. And, of course, if there's any team that you don't want to be in a situation where you are going to basically have to play without one of your best corners, it's against the Chiefs. So basically we're in a situation now where the Steelers get one guy back, take one step forward, and, of course, they take one step back. And that's part of the problem that you have at this time of year. Clearly, Saturday's game against the Ravens didn't go the way that you wanted it to go if you're a Steeler fan. But I think that one of the things I'm seeing a lot of panic in the streets, and I just don't know that it's necessarily what you need to be doing right now, because at the end of the day, the Steelers, you go through these stretches in football where it's difficult sometimes to win, just because it becomes, a difficult situation because of a lot of reasons. Injuries play into it, matchups play into it. Everybody's got good players plays into it. So I don't necessarily look at it from the standpoint of some people do, where, they've lost to a couple of good teams, and so therefore they might not be, ready to win in the playoffs. I mean, honestly, are they going to play anyone as good as the Eagles in the playoffs? Probably not. Are they going to play anyone as good as the Ravens in the playoffs? Not in the first round. So I think that it's going to be important to note that when you look at it through that lens, don't get too excited or up. What I hate about people in this town, and believe me, a lot of it, stems from the fact that there's talk radio and a 24/7 news cycle and everything else. But I can't stand the fact that there's this up and down, and, every week we've got, this let's react to exactly what happens instead of looking at the big picture. And I think if you look at the big picture, you know what, you're probably going to take a look at the Steelers and say, it's not surprising that they've lost a few games. They probably were playing a little above their head. And I think that really when you look at this team, you know what, if they finish 12-5 or even 11-6, if I'd have told you that at the start of the season, what would you have thought? Where would your head have gone if I'd have told you at the start of the season that they're going to win 11 games? I think for the most part, you would have probably said, you know what? I'll take 11-6. I'll take 12-5. I'll take those things. I saw, by the way, people are asking about Diontae Johnson. I saw that he was signed with somebody. I forget who it was. It might have been the Texans, actually. I think the thing about Diontae Johnson is, I said this the other day, and I really believe this. I think it's so important that the Steelers avoided him. Yeah, it was the Texans. And, of course, they lost Tank Dell. Didn't they lose Stephon Diggs earlier as well? I mean, they've lost some really important players, and they need receivers. I've said this about Diontae Johnson, though. As soon as he was cut by the Ravens, there were some people that said, well, the Steelers should go get him and get him back. My thing with that is I don't think the Steelers need Diontae Johnson from the standpoint of they don't need, the nonsense that he brings with him. in the locker room and everywhere else. And the thing about it is, I don't know that he's necessarily going to be better than, Calvin Austin or Van Jefferson. And so if he's your fourth receiver, is he going to be happy? Everything we know about him, is he going to be happy? No, he's not. Do you want him in your locker room? That's just the way it is to me. So this guy says, this guy here, Malvo, asked me if I think DJ was the problem back. No, I don't. But I think what's very clear with him is he's not going to be happy unless he's featured, unless he's catching a lot of passes. And the thing is, the Steelers are at the point in the season where they're going to be featuring George Pickens. And probably if DJ came back, he would be behind Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin. He would. Those guys have been here all year. They went through camp. They know this offense. Don't forget, DJ did not play in this offense. He played in a different offense, which would mean, okay, let's say they sign him today. He's clearly not going to be ready to play Wednesday, which means you get, okay, so you get 9 or 10 days with him to come and play against the Bengals. But is he going to be ready against the Bengals to be better than the guys that are ahead of him? I don't think so. And if he's not going to be a guy who is one of your top two guys, I'm sorry, I don't want him in my locker room because he's made it very clear he's not happy unless he's one of the top two guys. He's made that very clear. He wants the ball. And here's the thing, I don't hate him for that. I'm not angry about him. Really, every receiver should want the ball. My point is, I just don't think that he would be clearly better than the two guys they already have ahead of him. And I'm behind, behind George Pickens. And so if that's the case, to me, I just got to be honest with you. I probably am happy that they passed on him. The Texans are desperate. They need a receiver. It's clear that they absolutely are in a place where, even though they're going to make the playoffs mostly because their division stinks, they're probably going to be the worst team to get. Of all the teams in any of the divisions that get a home game, they're probably going to be the worst team that gets a home game. They're at a place where, if you think about it, the Colts are terrible. The Jags are terrible. And Tennessee is just abysmal. So my point is, I get it when people say that the Steelers needed receiver help, because they do. And I've said that for a long time. They need help at receiver. But I also know that sometimes when you go get help at receiver, it's not necessarily going to be somebody that you want to add to your locker room. And I think the Steelers are basically in a situation right now where they probably just don't want anybody coming into their locker room that's going to sort of destroy, whatever chemistry they might have. And I'm not saying Diontae Johnson's a locker room cancer. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying when he doesn't get the ball, he's very much not happy. And you know what that makes him? A receiver. That's what that makes him, a receiver. They all want the ball. They all think they're open on every single play. My point is, I think that Van Jefferson, especially Calvin Austin, I think Calvin Austin has really played well in the last few weeks and starting to look a lot like a guy who might legitimately be able to be your number two receiver. And so I just don't know that Diontae Johnson would be happy in that role. He's going to go to Houston right now. And, of course, with Tank Dell out and, they already had lost Stephon Diggs, it's one of those things where I really believe that they're probably happy. I would say that basically, if you think about it, they're probably happy with Calvin Austin, and they're probably happy with the way that the receiving core is, especially knowing now that George Pickens is coming back. Because if Pickens comes back, okay, which it sounds like he's going to, it changes everything about this team. Now we're not talking about needing DJ. We're just not. We're not talking about, again, we're not talking about needing DJ. And again, I'm not sure what these people here are saying. Oh, it's too late. It's too late. I know that. We're talking about the fact that he's already with the Texans. The point is, I'm talking about how the fact that the Steelers shouldn't have made a claim against him, a claim for him, because they probably don't need him. But Pickens coming back is a huge piece. And if you bring back Pickens, now all of a sudden the Steelers passing game looks a lot better than probably it has in a long, long time. And that's really what I would tell you. So now, I mean, if you think about it, the Steelers also have a couple of guys, though, that I think are going to be, very, very interesting in terms of what they have back in the secondary. Diontae Johnson was banged up a little bit. He's questionable. But Joey Porter Jr. is questionable. All of them could work. All of them could be, they could basically get to a point where they are playing or whatever. But I'm just going to tell you, I think reality of the situation is if the Steelers don't get the majority of the guys in their secondary back, it's going to be a tough ask. Here's the other thing. The Steelers were almost really the recipients of what I would call some very fortunate luck type stuff, because it looked like the Bills were going to lose to New England. And then all of a sudden, guess what? The Bills found a way to win. I mean, they were losing, and then, they got the fumble return. But even then, the Patriots looked like that. And then all of a sudden, the Bills won. Had the Bills lost that game, guess what? The Chiefs would have had nothing to play for. And if they had nothing to play for, obviously it's a much, much different game, I think, than if they had something to play for, obviously. And not just something to play for, but if they win the game to get to 15-1, okay, they will clinch the number one seed, which is what they really, really, really desire. So to me, I look at it like the Steelers kind of got a little bit unlucky here, because not only are the Chiefs going to play, but they're going to play with a lot of desperation. They're going to really play with a lot of desperation. And I think that one of the things about it is they know if they win this game, they're essentially going to get almost 2 weeks off. Well, I'm sorry, more than 2 weeks off. So this is December 25th, right, is when this game is going to take place. So the 26th, 27th, 28th. So what is it? The 30th is the Sunday. I guess I got to look at my calendar. But I'm going to give you sort of a timeline here for the Steelers. I mean, for the Chiefs, if they're able to win this. So the 29th is Sunday, right? Which would mean that that's the 29th. So the 5th is the last game of the season. The 12th is wild card weekend. Do I have that correct? I think I do. No, I'm sorry. Yes. No, I don't have that correct. I'm sorry. 20. So the 5th is the last week of the season. No. Yes, the 5th is the last week of the season. So the Chiefs are going to be off until the 19th. Really, basically that weekend. So if they win this game, we're talking about them having almost a full month before they have to worry about anything. Now, there's something to be said about maybe, there could be a lot of rust, but by the same token, all the bumps and bruises that they have, all the guys that are injured, all the guys that are questionable, guys like Patrick Mahomes who you want to keep safe, he's not going to have to play another game for, 20 days or something like that. I think, to me, honestly, that is something that is going to make them really, really, really try and play. And I think that, the Steelers could have been in a really good situation had the Bills lost on Sunday, because then the Chiefs wouldn't have anything to play for. And, of course, if you take Patrick Mahomes off that team, it's a completely different team. I'm not saying the Steelers can't win. They obviously can win. I'm not saying the Steelers won't win. I think they might. I'm just saying it would have been a whole lot easier if the Bills had lost on Sunday, and that's really what it comes down to. They had a chance to clinch, and I'm talking about the Chiefs, on Sunday, had the Bills lost. So now you look at the Steelers and you look at where they're at. And I think this is an important thing to remember. Okay, where are the Steelers at in the playoff chase? They lost the game, and everybody's ready to panic. But remember, they still control their own destiny. They're 10-5. They're the third seed, which hasn't changed. And now, if you think about it, okay, what's next? They've got 2 games. If they win them both, they're the third seed. They're still going to play against either the Chargers or the Broncos. The only thing that changes is if Baltimore wins on Wednesday and the Steelers lose. Then the Baltimore Ravens take control of the AFC North. They don't win it yet, but they take control of it. And then at that point, now we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about the Steelers being in the driver's seat versus the Steelers now needing the Browns, believe it or not, to beat the Ravens in order for the Steelers to have a chance to get back into the driver's seat in the AFC North. So that, there's a lot at stake here. There really is. I think it's pretty clear that the Bills and the Chiefs are going to be the 1 and the 2 seed. So if the Bills are the 2 seed, no matter what, they're going to get a home game. They're probably going to play against a team that they should be able to handle at home. Interestingly enough, the Bengals, Colts, and Dolphins are all still somewhat alive. If the Broncos beat the Bengals this week, it's over for all those teams because that would be the end of it. But the reality is, looking at it this way, the reality of it is, I think, if the Steelers were the 3 seed, would you rather play? Well, you wouldn't get to play those teams because those would be the 7 seed. But my point is, it's still not over, but it looks like it's going to be. My thing is, if you're the Steelers and you want to win and you want a path in the playoffs, you got to win this game and you got to beat the Bengals in the last week of the season. Because if you do that, you get yourself a home game and you're playing a much different and much better opponent, I think, in terms of matchups, than if you lose and you become the 5 seed. Even, again, I think the Steelers would beat the Texans in Houston. I don't think there's any question they would beat the Texans. Because, again, Houston, I think, is beat up to the point where now, you're obviously picking up Diontae Johnson off the scrap heap. I'm looking at it like that, and I'm just saying, basically, it is important, to note that from the standpoint of a playoff win, which we've all been talking about the Steelers need, a playoff win in reality, much easier to get it at home against the Chargers or the Broncos than on the road against the Texans, even though I think the Texans aren't very good. Because you play on the road, a lot changes. A lot of different things happen. A lot of things are out of your control. The Texans probably are going to be much better at home than they would be on the road. I think you'd much rather face a guy like Bo Nix here. So, again, this is an important game, but I'm not ready to panic. Because at the end of the day, if the Steelers lose this game and the Ravens win, let's assume the Ravens are able to beat the Browns at the end of the season in their last game, and the Ravens win the division. The Steelers' path is still not quite as different as you think. It's not quite as tough as you might think because it's the same in my mind. You'd much rather play at home, yes. The Steelers would obviously rather have a home game for ticket revenue and all the other stuff that comes with it. But if you have to go to Houston to play a game at Houston, you mean to tell me you don't think the Steelers couldn't win? I don't know. I think they could because I don't know that the Texans are all that good. And I think the Texans are not only not that good, they're beat up. The Steelers, though, have to get healthy. And I've said this a bunch of times to people. there are a number of people who, we need to win this game or that game. The Steelers aren't going to win the number 1 seed. So they're not going to get a bye, which means they've got to figure out a way to get their guys healthy. Ask yourself this. Would you rather play at home? Would you rather play at home? Would you rather play at home with guys hurt or play on the road with guys healthy? I don't think there's any question what you'd rather do. You'd rather play with guys healthy. That's the reality. So I think that's what you have to think about when you look really at this whole big picture. I think that's the most important thing. You got guys healthy. If you've got guys healthy, then to me, it's important, really, the reality of the situation is when your guys are healthy, you're a better team. So why not rest guys and make sure that you're healthy enough to go play your first round game? I'm just saying that's where I would look at it from the standpoint of, I'm not going to argue about the fact that you'd obviously rather play at home. But if I have a choice, I have to rest a couple of guys and maybe I lose a game and so I get a road game. I know my road game is against the Texans. I'd rather play the Texans on the road healthy than play at home without all my guys. And so you look to Sean Elliott, you look, Joey Porter Jr., Diontae Jackson. Obviously, Pickens is allegedly coming back. But the reality of the situation is you've got a number of guys banged up, even if they're not 100% healthy. And I'll add another guy, TJ Watt. I know he's not on the injury designation. I know that he's not in a place where he's being considered somebody that's injured. But did you watch the game the other day? He looks banged up to me. He didn't look like he was 100%. He looked like somebody who was really struggling to play and really struggling to run. I'll be honest with you. He's a guy that I might think about resting a little bit. That's all I would say. So I think when I'm looking at this kind of stuff, I think that when you look at the Steelers and where they're at, the two things that are most important than anything else, getting healthy, number one. That's the most important thing. Getting George Pickens back, getting guys like TJ Watt healthy. Those are important things too. So I really feel like it is important. The reason I'm not going to panic because they lost a couple of games is because at the end of the day, when you think about it, they really, really, really have played pretty well for most of the season. These losses have had something to do with, for the most part, they've had something to do with injuries and with health. And, for the most part, for the season, I mean, they've been in a place where I think at least they've been in a place where I would look at it and say they've gotten kind of fortunate with injuries for most of the year. And so, now you have that adversity that every team seems to go through. How do you handle it? Well, they're going to handle it for the next, 10 days. My thing is, if you beat the Chiefs, you know what, and lose a key player, I'd rather have the key player. That's me. Even if it means you lose control of your division. And I fully expect, by the way, the Ravens to win. I think they'll beat the Texans. I think losing Tank Dell, I think losing some of the guys they've had, I think the Texans are a team that's hanging on by the thread. And the only reason, really, they're still even, where they're at is because their division is so bad. I mean, if you look at that AFC South, it's almost incredible when you think about it. But they've got two teams that are 3-12. And then the Colts the Colts are just a team. At best, they're going to get to 9-8, but they're probably not even going to do that. It's kind of interesting, though. They could actually still win the division, the Colts. That's how bad that division is. So I really believe like the Ravens are probably going to win this game on Christmas Day. Probably going to win. And I think that if they win, they're probably going to win the division. But doesn't matter to me. Because to me, the most important thing with the Steelers is being healthy. I mean, I would like for them to go into the playoffs for once with all of their guys ready to play and all hands on deck and not have to worry about, TJ's banged up a little bit or this guy's banged up a little bit. That's what I would hope. So, in some ways, probably takes a little bit of the pressure off. If the Steelers were to lose on Wednesday and the Ravens won, because then you could actually look at maybe it becoming like a mini bye situation. And I know the Steelers don't think that way, but they should. Especially if, I think, the Colts, like if the Bengals were to lose this week to the Broncos, they'd be eliminated, which would mean that last week of the season would mean nothing to anybody. So that's where I would tell you it looks like to me. Oh, actually now someone pointed this out. Actually, I'm looking at this now. The Texans apparently have the tiebreaker because they absolutely did win their division. So think about it this. They have 9 wins and they've won their division. The Steelers and Ravens have 10 and they got to play till the end. That's the other part of it. And so I'm looking at it from that standpoint. I mean, the Texans really don't have much to play for. They're not going to really improve their lot in life that much. They're going to be the 4 seed. So now I really like the Ravens' chances to win this game on Wednesday. And I wonder even against them. So, by the way, the game's always on Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's is the home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. When you get down there, tell Archie that Paul Zeise sent you. Archie's also has all the games on Saturdays and Sundays, and, of course, all the college football playoff games. And they've got the best wings in the city. So get down to Archie's. Real quickly about the college football playoff, you got 4 teams that probably shouldn't have been in the playoffs. Well, here's the thing I'm going to tell you. You pick your 12 teams. Probably don't need to be in. But now let's say they're in. Here's what you need to do. You pick your 12 teams and then you seed them accordingly. Forget about who won divisions and who didn't. You seed them 1 through 12. So at least you get the best matchups. The other part of it is, playing on the road against a top 10 team is hard. That's what we saw this weekend. All of the home teams won, and they won handily. It's hard to play on the road. So all the whining and crying about the format, all the whining and crying about everything else, it's ridiculous. It's hard to play on the road. It's not about, this team shouldn't have been in. They got the right 12 teams. I'm convinced they got the right 12 teams based on the way the season played out. But it's hard to play on the road. It really is. And when you look at it that way and you think about it that way, you shouldn't be surprised by what happened this weekend. And I'll tell you this much. It's very, very, very similar to the college football playoffs. I'm sorry, to the NFL playoffs, because guess what? Wild card weekend, quite often, the home teams win and win going away. Why? Because it's hard to play in the playoffs on the road.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.